but everyone's like wishful thinking. In America, this is no joke. If you look at the ways that people think that they're going to become wealthy, business is not even in the top 3. Top 2 are marry in to wealth or win the lottery. That's how people think you get wealthy. Not joking, right? And I think the third one is like celebrity status now, something like that because of YouTube and all that kind of shit.
Of course.
Yeah, so like earn celebrity status, you'll be wealthy. That's fucking crazy.
Welcome to Barbell Business. I'm Mike Bledsoe here with Markus Gerszi and Doug Larson. See how I switch your names up like that? I like alternate.
Wow. It's like a brand new show.
I liked how you put the emphasis on the syllable the way you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're here again with Mr. Guy Ferdman. Today we're going to be talking about how to treat your business as a game. I popped off a little bit before we got on here with the Facebook Live and was just saying that running a business can be way more enjoyable if you're viewing it that way. I find it to be much easier. I find it much more easier. Is that right?
It's perfect.
Yeah. To get, I guess, an elevated view of what's happening. If you're not seeing it as a game, before I was seeing it as a game, I definitely found myself like in the maze versus being able to like look at the maze from above and start making more conscious decisions about where we actually want to go. So in regard to strategy, what are some ways that if they don't feel like it's a game, how do you get in that mindset?
Well, I would, before we go down that road, and I'll definitely take a question, I just would love to hear a little bit about your story, like what, and I think from the point of view of like when you start a business, we talked about in a previous episode, all about survival, right?
Right.
And then there's a essence where it kind of switches over to play. So it's like the significance gets removed. And when we're playing games, unless you're playing at like the really high level, it doesn't matter. Like, people who play levels at games at a high level, like sports, that's like super significant to them. That's why they have the emotional reactions when they're losing and but playing a game doesn't have to be significant at all. It's all about fun and play. So for you, like, what did you find was your transition? Like, what actually happened?
Well, I think I was spending time around people who were treating it that way and saying like, oh, they're having a good time. They're viewing this. They're just viewing it differently. And like we talked about in the last show, is you're the average of the people you're hanging out with, and then just being exposed to people who were treating it that way helped me kind of see it differently. There was this.
Is there a specific moment in time you remember?
I do remember when I realized that just about everything in life is a game. And I think that was probably the point in which it all kind of shifted. Anyway, I was like, oh, business is just this aspect of, this is a game out of the many games I am playing. My relationship is also, like with my wife, is also a game. In a way, and that might sound, I don't know, disconnecting, I guess.
Yeah, because a relationship is like, gaming somebody, but that's not what you mean.
Yeah. I'm not playing games
right.
with her. What I'm doing is I'm looking at, a game has a set of rules. And then what I've noticed is like, okay, you can either play the game that's been put in front of you. And so the game for a lot of people when it comes to business or relationships is, we've all been taught this is how you behave in this game, and then don't break these rules or something bad will happen.
Right.
And then I got to a place where I started being exposed to people who were creating their own games. And then when you're creating your own game, you can create your own rules. And so this happened in business. I started seeing the different levels I was exposed to. Okay, this is a game in business you can play. And then you can transcend to the next level of game where that other game exists inside of this bigger game. And then at some point, like I don't know if there wasn't like a day where I was like, it was
it's
more
game
like
now.
It's like a more of a slower transition of
Yeah.
like, oh, I can change this rule. I think it had more to do with rules. It was like, oh, I can change this rule that everyone else is following this rule in business, but it's not a legal rule. It's just something that everyone's agreed on. I'm gonna actually like
pivot.
yeah, I'm not gonna play by that rule of that game. And all of a sudden, like really cool things start happening. It's like, oh, what happens if we change more rules? Oh, this is neat. And then being in the habit of changing a lot of rules, and you're like, okay, let's just clear the whole board here. Like, let's just see if we can like start over with a whole new game. Same thing happens with personal relationships, and we talked a bit about we're almost like doomed to the behaviors of our parents in a way. For me, the model of a romantic relationship was set up by my parents,
Right.
and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I wanted to do something different.
You wanted different results.
I wanted different results.
Right.
So I started seeing my personal relationship as a game too. It's like, what are the rules that we're following that were set up by her parents and my parents, and then we brought this together. Some of the rules had conflict, so on and so forth. We worked through that. Then we started tweaking some rules in our relationship. Really cool things happen. Then we go, okay, let's clear the board. Let's see if we can start over fresh, bring in some new perspectives on that as well. So it's not just business. It could be pretty much, I started seeing it for every aspect of my life of, oh, and some people I think, yeah, maybe view me as somebody who's like kind of pushing boundaries on a regular basis. And I think that's why, is I've kind of discovered that when you push those boundaries, you know, you kind of eliminate a rule or start creating a new rule, really cool things can happen.
Sure. I mean, like serendipity, magic is on the opposite side of the rules that you have. Like, you know, most people's lives are so boring because they're so anticipated. There's nothing coming on the horizon that they don't predict, because I often think people mistake happiness for comfort, right? They think they want happiness, but what they're really doing is creating comfort, because comfort creates safety, all this kind of shit. Anyway, I'll leave that off to the side, but like the guy who started Mind Valley, Vishen, I always forget his last name, has an amazing book, and he talks about like rules, like bullshit rules. And even around religion, around relationships, and like looking at it. And it's really not that there's anything wrong with the rules. It's assessing for yourself whether inside of your experience you want to make that true, or whether it's serving you and where you want to be in your life, right?
Well, a lot of people are following the rules of a game that they don't know can be changed.
Right. They're adopting games from the past and making them their own without assessing whether or not they even fucking want to play that game at all.
Right.
It's like, you know, like whatever, it doesn't matter. I want to get into all that. But if we're going to start pushing this conversation towards games, there's an amazing book by Robert Greene called Mastery. And if you read the first hour of that book and you want to be an entrepreneur and you're not like hair on fire, lit up, like, holy fuck, this is everything to me, don't be an entrepreneur. Just go read that. You'll know
What's
whether.
the book?
Robert Greene, Mastery. Amazing book, right?
I've read it.
So
on my list now.
If we look at mastery, you know, I think anytime you adopt that you're going to be masterful at something, whether it's playing the guitar or being in peak physical form or being an entrepreneur, that's where growth happens, right? Because mastery elicits a game. It starts creating a context for, I want to play a game. And if you remember when you're a kid, everything is a fucking game. All the things that you're good at today, and everybody who's watching this, listening to this, there's some aspect of your life that you're masterful at, whether it's cooking, or even something as simple as, like, I don't know, you walk really sexy. I don't give a shit what you've mastered in your life. You have some mastery, and there are lessons that you've learned as a context of being in that space all the time. Now, a lot of people spend their whole life being masterful at one thing instead of understanding mastery and understanding that everything they learned by being masterful at that, they can apply all the same lessons to a different area of life and have mastery show up really, really, really fast, right? So if we're looking at a game, I want to define what that means, because... And it doesn't mean that I have the right definition. It means like we'll have a distinction that we use this conversation inside of. So every game has rules. It has something at stake, meaning one thing is more important than something else. Like getting this ball in here is more important than not getting that ball in there. And has a time limit, right? So if we're going to create a context for like gamifying your life, gamifying your relationship, gamifying your business, all three aspects need to be there. And most people, that's what they do in business. There's nothing at stake. Right? It's just survival all the time. They're not playing games. They're not putting anything in the future. We talked about that before. So they're not actively participating in creating a game. And they're sure as fuck usually not setting time limits. Right? So it's like, oh, I want this someday. Like, I want to go to Australia someday. I want to do this trip someday. Everything's a one day, someday conversation. And because of that, it's just like perpetually living in this ethos of never really doing anything, spending a lot of time thinking about it as if that's being an action, and then really not taking action at all. So like when the movie The Secret came out, it taught about intentionality, which does work. And then you have to fucking take action, because intentionality sets the precedence for opportunities to arise that are opportunities for you to like step forward and take those actions. But everyone's like wishful thinking. In America, this is no joke, If you look at the ways that people think that they're going to become wealthy, business is not even in the top 3. Top 2 are marry in to wealth or win the lottery. That's how people think you get wealthy. Not joking, right? And I think the third one is like celebrity status now, something like that because of YouTube and all that kind of shit.
Of course.
Yeah, so like earn celebrity status, you'll be wealthy. That's fucking crazy.
By the way, I know a lot of people who would qualify as having celebrity status via social media, and they don't make a lot of money
Sure.
from it. Yeah, and I have a feeling that people actually think they make a lot more than they probably are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you marry for money, generally you're not happy. And if you win the lottery, generally in a few years you'll be poorer than you were before you won the lottery. It's like just statistics. Like 95% of people are they like ruin their lives when they win a lottery. Mostly because they didn't become somebody who knows how to deal with wealth. They just got a lot of wealth and they have no capacity for all that energy. So they can't deal and then they start being very destructive, right? So, like looking at that as a business owner, I think for a lot of people listening right now, they're like, oh, fuck, yeah, I haven't been doing any of that. And then, with anything new, especially entrepreneurship, you have to get, people, we have a very funny relationship with failure. People avoid it like the plague. And if you have a small child, and my brother has 2 kids, so like I noticed this, it's not like the kid just starts talking one day and it's like, bah, 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 or walking one day. Yes, there's the first steps they take, and then it takes years for them to master how to walk properly. They're like this like stumbly little kid, and before you know it, like, a year or 2 later, they're running around and they have perfect balance. But that took time. And even after they gain balance, they fall a lot. Like they run and they fall, right? So you forget that when you were mastering even walking, it wasn't like an overnight sensation. You were taking small actions every day, taking steps every day, and eventually you found balance. That's how it always is. But as an adult, we have this like idea, this perception that we're supposed to be naturally gifted at everything because we're told that talent's a real thing. So like, oh, I must not be talented. That's not for me, which is bullshit. Michael Jordan, maybe he had the right body or whatever. It was a talent or work ethic, right? Or he started at a young age. Tiger Woods was a talent or was a work ethic. Every single guy who we've ever known, woman, guy, anybody who's good at anything, it's a consistent and apparent work ethic. Like Steph Curry today, if you go look at his work ethic, nobody is doing what that guy's doing. He's on a different level, which is why he plays at a different level. So you kind of have to get this idea out of your head that talent is given to you and that it really is, or talent is like an earned thing, which is why, again, why Mastery is such a good book, because it gives you the blueprint of what mastery looks like and the phases you'll go through it as you take that journey. So every masterful journey is going to be like student, practitioner, master. And in the olden days, before 1903, when we didn't have the school system that we have right now, the way people learned, yes, there were school systems, but everything was done through mentorship. So there was 7-year mentorships were really, really common ideas. And the idea of 10,000 hours to master something comes from 7 years. That's about 10,000 hours of work. And that's like, so you would have a mentor whose only sole purpose was to make you better than they were. And that's how we passed on information for years. And that really, really, really works and resonates for people. So we're talking about coaching and mentoring. Of course you want somebody who's mastered something to elevate you and teach you and do all those kind of things. Yeah, so last point, I know I'm just talking a lot, so I want you guys to chime in too, is when you take something on like in a masterful way, you're going to deal with overwhelm and frustration. It's just what's going to happen because you don't have the capacity to truly understand yet. And on top of that, you're learning new specialized terminology. So whatever you walk into, it's like learning language from scratch. Your industry has specialized terminology. Internet marketing has specialized terminology. Coaching has specialized terminology. Faith has specialized terminology. If you don't know those terms, you don't have access to the paradigm that the people who've mastered that part of the language have. Now, me and you might stand around 2 doctors. We might even understand the words they're using, but they don't mean the same thing to the doctors that they do to us. And because of that, they have access to medicine and health and taking care of people in ways that me and you just don't, right? So it's the same thing. You really want to start with understanding the terminology that's in your industry that gives you access to something immediately. Then it's about creating games and creating them in such a structure that doesn't overwhelm and frustrate the mind at really high anxiety levels, and that means chunking. Mm-hmm. So like I would love to like find out for you guys when you're creating a goal, you're creating something that you guys want to do now, and I know you guys are in creation all the fucking time. What do we want to do? What do we want to do? What feels good? What's the process you guys are going through to systematically go and create something?
Yeah, we do. We set goals that are 10 years, 3 years, 1 year out, and then set 90-day. And it's more of like a vision for something that's 1 year or further out. And then when we get into the 90-day game, or we get into the 3-month, the quarters, then we have like the concrete objectives that need to get accomplished in order to get there.
So how do you do it? What's like when you're setting? Because a lot of people overestimate how much they can do in a year, underestimate how much they can do in like 3 or 5, right? Like how much can really change in that amount of time if you like really focus on one area of life and go towards mastery. 5 years from now, your life will be
totally different.
like a complete beyond your imagination. Most people just don't take the ride. So let's say you're looking 5 years out, which is really overwhelming. Or like I want to be traveling, I have the best relationship, I want to all this kind of shit. That's like, oh my god, how the fuck am I going to start doing that? What do you guys do to get to actions you're going to start taking tomorrow?
I think it's reverse engineering. First of all, figuring out how to chunk it. I think that for me personally is how I approach any and everything. If I say, okay, I want to get really good at public speaking, I figure out, okay, well, what are the kind of the tools I need to understand? Then let's say, okay, now I need to set the goal, and I'm going to reverse engineer it back. And when we go from like the really big picture stuff in the company, we will set that like huge vision, and then reverse engineer back. Okay, that means there's going to be this layer, this layer, this layer. Okay, within this layer, what are all the different pieces? What do we have to set up in this way? And just try to just reverse engineer. And we go through a creative process where it's first very loose, it's very conversational. We start to document, and then we start to kind of deep dive into them. And I think, I mean, it's an ongoing craft that we're working on becoming better and better at. But I think that the more that we do it, we seem to be getting more and more efficient, and it becomes much more attainable. We are actually setting goals and achieving them and progressing pretty quickly with it.
I would say one of the things that limited us before, like we're getting better at this, it's becoming much more easy, is our ability to communicate with each other on what needs to happen. I think that was something that I struggled with years ago, was even being able to take this vision I had in my head and just share it effectively, because I think I don't know if I can speak for everybody else. I do see this with other business owners where they know what needs to happen. They don't understand why people aren't doing the thing.
They do not understand, or they do. I just wanted to catch it.
The business owner has a vision for what they want to happen, and they want their employees to implement, but they're not
doing it.
They're not doing it, and it's because they never explained it well.
Right.
And so it's that communication gap. So for us, I think one of the big things that's happened is we've added a lot more structure into our planning. Like where do we want to be? Okay, what has to happen in order to get to there? And what needs that, in 90-day chunks is kind of like that's the amount of time that we plan for. So every 90 days we get together, we go, okay, the vision for 1 year from now has shifted a little bit, and that's another thing that we've been doing this for a while, and
what's a while? How many years have you guys been
5
doing this?
years.
Yeah.
And so initially it was just kind of like we're hanging out and being like, all right, we should be doing this.
Right.
We're doing it. And then now it's gotten much more mature, and that we do meet every 90 days. And the first time we tried to do the quarterly planning, we would do it for a quarter, and then we'd look up and 6 months had passed. And we go, oh, shit, we totally dropped the ball. And now again, it's become much more systematic. It's expected. If we as the leaders didn't say anything, the employees would be going,
what the fuck?
Where we got? What's happening?
What's the vision?
Yeah. So so the fact that we're much more frequent in our communication has made it to where things just happen much more easily, a lot more flow. And then we've also So
do you guys have somebody kind of like holding you accountable for like staying on task with those kind of things that are really important to your business?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Perfect. Got it. So I mean, it's really good. Obviously, I believe that's the structure of doing stuff like that too, right? And again, like setting by when. So if you know like 90 days out, let's say that's whatever, like June 31st from now, 30 days back, what's the date? 30 days back, what's the date? 30 days back, what's the date? And then it's like chunking. All right, like these are the 4 things we need to accomplish this month to get to this part of the goal. These are the 4 things we need to do this month to get this part of the goal. Is it okay if I draw? Will I not be able to reach?
It.
So I move this too. I'll probably take a white.
If you're listening, you're missing out.
You're missing out, people. Right? So integrity. If we talk about the idea of integrity, a lot of people think of it as like a moral issue, like I'm out of integrity with something, again, shame, guilt, all that stuff that doesn't work. So I want to remove morality from integrity.
By the way, if you're listening to this show before you're listening to the show that we did with Guy previously,
Yeah.
I think it'd be good because of just some of the terminology you're using.
Yes.
I think if you were to listen to the first show, this show will make more sense.
Yeah, and I'll create distinctions here too, so everything's nice and clear. So like if we take integrity, like what I would equal it to, just make sure I have enough room. Right, is workability. We all want workability in life, and this, if when you have workability, you create velocity and momentum in the things that you're trying to create and you want to do, right? So if we look at, we were talking about like a bicycle wheel. If we look at a bicycle wheel, in order for this thing to spin properly, it has to have integrity, does it not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, it's going to spin, it's going to be effortless, it's going to be nice and balanced, etc. Now, if I'm out of integrity, or I put an out of integrity, so an out of integrity could be like a broken agreement. So you guys create a plan. Michael says, okay, I got this for the next 30 days. You get to crunch time. Michael didn't accomplish that task. What did we just lost? We lost integrity in the wheel, right? And this is what ends up happening in people's lives. They have all these broken agreements, the guilt and shame, and they actually take zero responsibility for it. And eventually over time, fine, you could take a spoke out of a wheel. It's still going to spin, but it'll get to that part of the wheel and it'll like flatten and it'll require more effort now to get around it. But eventually, as you take out the spokes, the wheel has no integrity, squishes, no forward momentum whatsoever, right? So when we're talking about integrity, if you really just think about it as a function of workability, communication, that's why I wanted to talk about it, is what creates a foundation for there to be integrity. So like people, for instance, when you invite people to like a dinner party or out to a restaurant and they don't show up on time, the way that we have it in society is I don't show up on time plus excuse equals me being on time. Hey, I wanted to be here, but I got stuck in traffic. Okay, well, that's out of integrity with what you gave your word to. And that starts limiting your power now with people because people start listening to you as somebody who doesn't hold integrity with their word, right? And that's fundamental micro level stuff. But when you start wanting to create at the macro and you're like, hey guys, I have this vision. I want to create stuff. I'm all about it, blah, blah, blah. And we all have friends like this that talk a big fucking game and never do anything. Or you're like, yeah, I'm in. Let's fucking do that thing. And you're there to support them. And you're like, all right, Bobby. Like, good luck with that, you know, and I'll see you in 3 months when you're like, oh, all right, doing the same shit you were doing before. Exactly. Fucking Bobby. So you never listen to fucking Bobby.
So if you're living in a world where you paint a vision of something and nobody is jumping on board with you, maybe you've got a history of being out of integrity.
Yeah, and you guys know this, right? Life is about relationships and partnerships, right? Everything is a relationship in life. Relationship to self, relationship to God, relationship to your business. If you want to fucking get shit done, study relationships. Because it's the only thing we have in this world. We're relationship beings. We relate to other things. So for you guys, like you said, it was kind of chaotic in the beginning, but you guys chose that this is an area of life you're going to master. So it becomes like a dance. Now, if I go and like, I want to learn the salsa. I want to master the salsa, right? When I'm first there, I'm fucking head down. I'm counting the steps in my head. I'm awkward. I'm weird. I'm feeling like a failure and an idiot and a fool and all those things. But as I step out of being a student into practitioner, my eyes come up. I can see my partner. I'm present. I start moving with them. I stop counting in my head. I just start doing the motions. Eventually, I master the dance. Now, I do that dance. I do the salsa and I master it, but I don't do it like anybody else does it. I do it my way. Nobody dances the salsa the same way. Like nobody runs their business the same way. So when you're like looking for mastery, yeah, you might have a mentor and they're going to show you the ropes, but ultimately how you're going to build your business, if you just blueprint what they're doing, it won't be true to you. It won't work the same. I've been to so many events, as I'm sure you guys have been to. I've heard so many fucking marketing ploys in my life, like what to do this, what to do that. Person standing on stage is like, oh, you're going to make a fucking $1 billion if you just do that. And then I implement and I get like a tenth of the results that they're getting, right?
Yeah.
They have a level of mastery there and all these nuances that they understand in their like emotional feedback system, that they're very intuitive about why they're doing what they're doing, that you can't teach from stage and it doesn't work. Just like you guys, you can give, again, people everything, keys to the castle, but you know that experience matters. And there's all these nuances that are kind of unspoken, but you feel inside your body and you just know intuitively, like if we do that, it'll work. I don't know why I know that. I just know that it will. And that comes from being in partnership, dancing for a long time. So you guys now create, and because you've been dancing together for a long time, you just know Mike is good at this, you know, he'll do that, et cetera, and things will just perform really well. And that takes time. And that's why where you're like, well, what's the magic pill? I can give you the structure, but I can't teach you the nuances.
Yeah, I think sometimes following a blueprint, I think we all do that in the beginning. Follow some type of blueprint to get off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, even if it's not something that's written down in step 1 through 10, you're looking at other businesses.
Sure.
You go, oh, this guy charges this much. They offer, I'll say CrossFit Gym in this example is, okay, they offer classes at 6 a.m., 7 a.m., 9:30 a.m., noon, 4, 5, and 6, and they have an intro class. It's 12 sessions, so on and so forth. And then over time, people have that, and we even sold a blueprint. And then at some point, somebody's going to go, okay, I've done this long enough. I'm going to start tweaking it.
Right.
So I
like
know
what you said with the little changes. You want to fuck with the rules, right? You want to change those rules now.
Yeah, people buy and sell these business blueprints all the time, and that it seems it never stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I've even watched people who sell like a lot of programs. They even get a little frustrated. Oh, it's not working because they changed my system. I was like, well, the system wasn't working for them the way it works for you. You can't do the same thing with everybody all the time. It's not a machine.
It's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Ever.
There's people with personalities and desires that aren't in line with the desires you had when you built the system, so on and so forth. Which is like why when we do coaching, we have our systems, we build it around how they run their thing.
Sure.
It's not a one-size-fits-all cookie cutter anything. That's not possible. Like you're saying, it'll get them started, it'll get them 10% there, but then you have to start understanding how things work over time, or else you're going to just end up frustrated.
I think that's the key to the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
When if you're really a great coach or teacher, it's understanding the principles, it's understanding the fundamentals, and then being able to say, okay, great, your application is this, these are your strengths, these are your weaknesses, this is where you're coming from, this is where you're trying to go, and then helping someone navigate and create their own version of it. The blueprint if you want to look at the blueprint as a positive, it's really the framework that we're going to say, okay, we know that there's these bigger phases and these key things that we want to talk about, but now let's figure out what your version of this thing is and make sure you have the tools necessary. Now, sometimes you say, oh, you've got 0 in this category. We know we need something. Let me give you a starting point, and then let's say, okay, great. Once you've mastered this version and just copycatting because you were doing nothing, now let's get you, now that you're starting to be able to bring your head up, bring your eyes up and say, okay, I've memorized the steps. Okay, now how can I make these my own? How can I start to add some personality and flair to it? And then you have ownership. Now, once you have the ownership of it, now you can start to actually refine and really dial it in because you're starting to understand the game that you're playing.
Mm-hmm. At the small level, at the micro levels, that like everything at the micro is going to grow to the macro. So it's really super important to put consciousness on that. And I want to put as positive spin on this as possible. I'm not saying that blueprints don't work and that mentorship and guidance don't work. And I don't think anybody should be doing anything that is really important to them without a mentor in their life. If for the very least just a reflection of your state while you're going through that process, even if that's all it's for. But ultimately, what it pinpoints to is the pitfalls that you're inevitably going to hit, because anybody who goes through a process of mastery is going to hit those pitfalls. There's no avoiding it. That's why there really is no quick fix to fucking anything. Like, if you want to be the best free throw shooter in the world, guess what? You're going to have to miss a lot. And you guys know mastery for me is not about hitting the target. Mostly it's just course correction. Yeah. Once in a while, you're like dead on, and then you're like fucking push the gas pedal because we're really aligned right now. But a lot of times it's really just kind of course correcting over and over and over again. But that's what a mentor does. They're like, oh, you're in a pitfall right now. Here's what I did when I dealt with that. And it gives you access to a different paradigm, and that's how you grow really quickly.
Have you ever worked with entrepreneurs who, say you have 10 different pieces of the business, but they need all 10 pieces, maybe, but they refuse to look at the one.
Yeah.
Or, they're like, oh, I'm not really interested in that. I think I can do enough over here to take care of that. Mm-hmm. How do you manage that?
I think, again, it's getting people related to reality. Like, okay, because instead of trying to manipulate and change them, that never works. I don't want to bring Trump into this, but like the Trump phenomenon, right? If you've chosen your candidate, like we have 2 years of them running for office. People choose their candidate like month 1. And then we have to watch this shit for 2 fucking years. You tell a Trump candidate he's an idiot, what does he do? He just digs in his heels more. Every opposition to a point of view creates a stronger point of view for that. It's biological in nature. So for all the negativity that you saw about what he was doing, for his supporters, that was like heels in. It just made him believe more in who he is, right? And that's how it is. Like Mother Teresa used to say, if you invite me to an anti-war rally, I won't come. If you invite me to a pro-peace rally, I will. Because she understood this principle of applying pressure against that which you don't want and how it doesn't work. So that's all they're really doing. They have something and they're applying pressure in an area of life. Now, if you're trying to control that and try to maneuver their point of view, they're going to dig their heels in more into what they believe. So it's really about people open up when they feel like they're being gotten. And for the most part, we've fucked with our listening so much because we're so irresponsible with it. We think, again, it's a passive thing. No, it's an active thing that you need to actively be working on how you listen and how people listen to you also. So if you're in that situation, they are feeling their experiences, I'm not being heard. At the moment they would feel gotten, they would release that and they would look for opportunities elsewhere. And anybody who's like, if you've been in an argument with a friend or a spouse and they came to you and they're finally like, what are you waiting for in that situation? Again, we were talking about taking full responsibility in the last episode, or being in like the fault and blame model. In the fault and blame model, if something's fucking going on, like me and him have an argument, right? Now, because we have a 50-50 model, like you do your half, I do mine, we're both waiting for something to happen, right? I'm waiting for him to apologize. He's waiting for me to apologize. And I go, well, I'll do that when he does. And we dig in our heels. But in the models that work in life, it's 100-0. If you want fully functional relationships, 100 over here, 0 over there. Best relationship I ever saw between a man and a woman was a woman who had an agreement with his wife that no matter what happened, in any situation that caused negativity or argument, he would always be the first to apologize. Now, for a lot of people, that sounds like giving up hand in the relationship. But for him, he took on, I am the source of the passion and love in my relationship. That's his point of view. So giving up being right about what he feels he's right about, and that was the agreement, even if I feel that I'm right, sourced a beautiful relationship. And it's kind of like that in everything. Like, fine, my brother and I always say, you can be right or you can be rich. You can be right or you can be happy. You can be right or fill in the fucking blank. And that's what's happening. The person's being righteous, but what they really need is just to be heard and gotten, and then there's suddenly space for something. So if I come to him and I'm in that relationship with him where I take full responsibility for whatever happens, I'm like, hey man, look, I'm really sorry for what happened. Totally not my intention to have created that, and I really, really see like how I was blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, wow, okay, I really appreciate you saying that. Suddenly there's all this space to create something. And then he will probably be like, yeah, man, I'm sorry, I did that too, right? It just creates like for completion and clarity and all that kind of stuff. So in a business relationship, it's the same. If you're opposed to them, it doesn't work. If you look at where something can be taken responsibility for, listen, boom, it'll shift right away.
Yeah. In regard to that opposition, I think some people feel like they're competitive against another business. Mm-hmm. How does that apply to that mentality, or is that different?
I think that's the American mentality. The school system is competition. The work system is competition. This is a capitalistic, competitive environment, and you go elsewhere in the world, and that's why Americans sometimes don't see what's happening. It's a collaborative societies. Like if you go to like Finland, Norway, and all these places that are super advanced, Japan, it's collaborative in nature. So it's the same thing here. Like if you're aligning yourself and you're working with somebody, but the basis of the work is we're in competition, how's that going to go? Because that person's always feeling like you're against him or trying to do something to him. When you're like, hey, look, I'm here to support you. I'm in collaboration with what you're doing. What's good for you is good for me. And you guys know, like running a business where there's collaboration is beautiful. You go to bed every night, you feel like a fucking king of the world. You're in service. You're making a stupid amount of money, and it's all like doing goodness on the planet, serving people. That feels amazing. So I think it's just about letting people know, like, I'm aligned with this vision. I'm looking for best ways to help you create that. And I see that there's an inconsistency of something missing here, right? So like, I really want to get why you have this point of view. And I want you to be, or I'm requesting, right? You always want to use language that's not like I'm forcing you to think something, like I'm inviting you to do something. I'm inviting you to take a look at whether this is really working for your business. If you think it is, fantastic. We can keep doing it. And here's my game plan. Why don't we set a deadline? 90 days from now, you keep doing what you're doing. Let's see if you get the result that you said that you can get. If you can't, would you be open to the fact that at that point in time, I get to step in and give you my point of view and we try that for 90 days? Let's split test it. And then again, it's a collaboration. Fine, let's do what you want to do.
Yeah. What are some signs, what are some common signs that you see where someone's out of integrity and or in integrity?
I mean, just like in the real world, no one's listening to them, and they're probably yelling a lot because when we're not feeling heard, we start raising our voice. Like that's going to help people get in. You see a lot of that in like the reality TV shows where people are coming in there to like redefine people's businesses. They get super angry. They start yelling a lot because they've been out of integrity with their employees and the vision for so fucking long that everyone's like, fuck you. And we have, and every family has like that person in the family that everyone's like, oh God, because there's just been so many out of integrities for so long that you just can't even listen to the bullshit that comes out of their mouth anymore. If that person came to every person in the family, it's like, dude, for 20 years, I just didn't see what I was causing. 20 years, I've been believing this, that you guys are against me or you didn't love me or blah, 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 right? And you just own that. And then you go, look, I'm not committed to that at all. Like, I'm committed to, like, love and open communication. People are going to be like, come back in. Like, you're fine, right? It just creates a resolution right away.
Well, let's take a break.
Sure.
Hey, I'm Jason, and I'm the owner and head coach at Iron Fire Athletics, home of CrossFit Poway. Before implementing Barbell Logic, we were really struggling to get people into the gym. leads had just fallen flat. And it really hadn't always been that way. We've been a CrossFit affiliate since 2007, and back then, early adopters and their friends, who they would refer, was enough for steady growth. 2007, 2008, it's definitely like that. Then 2010 to 13, maybe 14, there was rapid growth. I mean, I know it was happening in lots of places in the country and around the world, but right here in San Diego, it was pretty explosive. People were knocking down the doors trying to get in here, and it was hard to keep track of them. We loved it. We loved the new faces, and it was really exciting. It was a really exciting time. We were growing quickly, and it forced us to put some systems in place, and that was great. But besides that, we weren't really doing much to stand out in the increasingly crowded San Diego fitness scene. We're relying on our website saying established 2007, and okay, that's going to prove that we've been doing it a long time, and we probably know what we're talking about. By 2015, that wasn't working at all. Traffic to our website fell flat, mainly because we had no marketing strategy at all, and any posts to social media were random. And we just stopped getting new leads. We went months before we would hear from someone who was interested in joining the gym. Okay, I really need to start taking the business seriously, figuring out where the jam is and why we're not getting anybody, why we're not being heard out there. And I started looking into having a pro website built, getting CRM for managing leads and member retention, because any lead that we got, I could not afford to lose them. I needed the best possible way to get them through the doors and into the gym. I was kind of shopping all over the place and not really finding any products or services that I really loved. And it wasn't until I was listening to the podcast and I heard the crew talk about Barbell Logic. And I was like, wait, what are they talking about? Yes, this sounds exactly like what I'm looking for. I was super excited. As soon as I got home, I pulled up Barbell Logic on Google and watched the demo video. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Finished watching that video, scheduled a call with Markus. As soon as our new website launched, we started getting leads again. And we had 3 new leads in the first week. And I don't think we had 3 leads in the 6 months before that. In our first 3 months, we converted 37 new members, and we're still growing. Our fundamentals program always has people in it. Having Logic is like having a web developer, a personal assistant, and a business coach, and paying them $2 an hour each. It's so easy to use. As soon as someone opts in at the website, they go into your funnel, and there's a defined process that takes them from lead to member. And that clears up a ton of time and attention. So what I really appreciate about the Barbell Logic team is that they're constantly adding value and looking for new ways to improve the service. They put me with marketing genius Angelo Cisco since I was struggling so much with marketing, and he's my business coach, and having a business coach is a total game changer. I'm starting to see how the magic works in marketing, and it's really cool. Barbell Logic has been one of the best investments I've made in myself in the business, hands down. And I'm sure in a year or 2 from now, looking back, I'll say it's the best investment. If you're considering Barbell Logic, do it. You'll be so happy you did. I'm working on marketing, that's my thing. You might need help with something else, but whatever it is, doesn't matter. Sales process, retention, whatever you're struggling with, the Barbell Logic team will help you.
All right, we're back here with Guy Ferdman, and I forgot what exactly. Oh yeah, we were.
Maybe you shouldn't be leading this.
Maybe this is my opportunity to jump in and actually say something on this episode.
Please.
Oh, thank God.
By the way,
So-
Doug has a good excuse. He's drugged up
I'm all drugged up,
he had surgery
but I feel fantastic.
just 2 days ago. Yeah, 2 days ago. So he's a little slow. He's catching up, practicing his active listening skills.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we're framing business as a game. Most people, when they hear the word game, one of the first things that kind of emerges is they think about having fun. Games are supposed to be fun. How do you use framing business to make how do you use framing business as a game to make it more fun?
Yeah, great question. I think whether we're talking about business or life, to me, it's all applicable. It's all the same. I just want to start off by just saying this, and then I'll come back around to that. When I started my business, I think one of the big breakthroughs for me was I remember previous to having my own business, like I would show up at work and I would kind of be like one way, be with my family, kind of be a different way, kind of be with like my friends, just a little bit different. And when I started my business, I felt like the borders had disappeared, and suddenly I just saw it was all life. Like if I wasn't working on my relationships, my business wasn't growing. If I wasn't working on my relation with my friends, like my family life wasn't, like it all just started being like this interweb. So we're talking about business, but it's life. It's all applicable. And I believe that we've made life extremely significant. Life is actually a game that we forgot that, like I believe that we forgot that we're playing this game. So business is a lot of the same thing because it becomes this like means to survival. It becomes wildly significant. So when we're talking about like gamifying stuff, it's actually about removing the context that it's significant at all, right? Like life can be fun, play, and ease. And we were talking about ways of being. So like being fun, being play, being ease. Those are all ways of being that could be quite natural and are quite natural to a human being. Like children are at fun, play, and ease all the fucking time. You can be also. So it's really just allowing for yourself to start kind of like operating from the space of like, I don't judge and make things significant. When I'm not getting the results, that's not significant. When I am getting the results, also not significant, right? So I'll give you an example. Like Wayne Dyer has this amazing example where he says, if you, like we're talking about mastery before, right? If you go out to a golf course, and it's your first time out there, and your goal is, I want to hit this ball 300 yards straight ahead, dead head, right? Get out there, boom, swing it. You hit it too hard, club face isn't right, ball slices 15 yards to the right. You can look at that in two different directions. Most people will say, fuck, I failed. Give up right there and then. That's how they operate in life. The other way to operate is, I got a result, not just the one I was looking for. What can I learn from that? What was missing? Missing from this, that if I put it in, it would make it better. Now, if you have a golf pro behind you, that's what the point of a mentor is, looking at your swing, looking at what you're doing, and say, hey, if you just, open up your hips a little bit. I don't know anything about golf, by the way. This is all just like movie shit.
You had me sold.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I open up my hips.
Yeah, hips. Okay, what else you got to do?
First thing,
you got to stand up straight, have a little bit of a bigger thing. Anyway, so yeah, and then, like slowly over time, as you start whacking at this ball, you're going to get closer and closer to hitting dead center. And again, it's not significant. And that it's a choice to make things significant or not. And significant, when I first started hearing, like understanding this relationship to like the voice in my head, and we discussed it in the previous one, as like, it's not me, I'm just observing this voice. I've also seen over the time that the voice isn't the problem. It's the judgment about what it's saying that's the problem. It's the thoughts about the thoughts that are really the problem. Thoughts are like clouds in the fucking sky. They show up, they disappear. They seem to really have no genealogy. We're not really sure where the fuck they come from. They just kind of like appear as they please. Like you're sitting there like working, and suddenly you're like, fuck, I want something purple. And it's like you start going in all these different directions. So it really is about just removing the judgment about it and just having like, all right, well, it's going to be fun if we get those results. So I'm going to like be, in my element, and I'm going to like be happy to share and all the other stuff that really makes a difference for us. I think that's kind of the direction with it.
We were talking earlier about integrity and being in integrity. Was there a point where you felt like you were out of integrity in your business? Yeah. I know this like I'm switching.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Going quick tangent.
Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. I think that's a big idea. Like I was out of integrity in my life, like all over the fucking place, in so many relationships. So it's funny because like I'll talk to a business owner, and you ask me like, what's my coaching, right? But here's why. I think I'd have a bigger business if I was like you guys. If I was like super specific with the niche that I wanted to talk to, and obviously you find the messaging that's right, how to really help those people. Mine is like I have like global scale type of ideas. I'm not talking like social transformative changes, really the game I'm playing. So I can't be so specific. However, if a business owner comes to me and we start having a conversation, they're like, I just can't break through. And I'm like, well, tell me about your father. And they're like, huh? Like, I'm just trying to make money. I'm like, no, tell me about your dad. And then like I start like listening to that conversation, and I find out what conversation of money he grew up around.
Yep.
And then you find out maybe the father like at some point lost a lot of fucking money. They were really poor, and that's the conversation that this guy is dealing with, and he's got that incomplete with his father, and he's holding it against him. There's no breakthrough in money coming in the business until that's completed with dad. So like the road is not linear. And for entrepreneurs, that the road's not linear. It's not like this is not success, this is success. It's like, there's a meme that always gets around how it's like this like big fucking curvy line, like what you think it is, what it actually is. And that's the thing that people don't look at. It's the micro game in your relationships that are impacting your ability to produce, your ability to create, your ability to just believe. Right, and the belief is always going to lead to how much action you're willing to take in life. The more action you take, the more results you get, the more belief you have, and you kind of want to get in that cycle. So people just don't correlate those things to each other.
I'm finding this conversation becoming more and more common, and one of the reasons I think that is the case is this is the first time in human history where people can choose to be at different have different levels of success financially, in business, and in anything, in relationships. 100 years ago, we were talking about mentorship earlier, they would find, I'm going to have this career, I'm going to mentor for 7 years, I'm going to go into it, and how much money you make is pretty much just set. And now we're living in a society where there's a lot of upward mobility. People can just choose to make more money if they really want. They can choose to have a different kind of business if they want. And I think that in the past, if you were born into a family where there was a certain level of financial success or a certain size business, then that becomes your normal. And now you're just operating, and you can operate that business the way it's been operating, and it'll grow slowly over time. And now we're in a point in our society where people go, oh, I was making minimum wage, and then 3 years later, I'm making $1 million a year, and that didn't happen 100 years ago. It just didn't happen.
Yeah.
And so now what we're dealing with is, because that's possible, people desire to have that change. They go, oh, I don't have to be this. I can choose to be anything I want to be. We grew up hearing that, and there's all this baggage that a lot of entrepreneurs are carrying around. Like I personally came from, my dad was a business owner, and it was very blue collar, very like, I'm going to be a technician, I'm going to do all the work.
Right.
I don't trust anyone to do it as well as I would do it. Work sun up to sundown, work hard to just make ends meet, to be in survival. And so being raised that way, there was a lot of things that I had to unwind and change how I believed if I wanted to have that upward mobility and say, okay, I want to have an income that's 10x what my father had. Now I have to think completely differently. That's not something that's presented in school. That's not something that our education system isn't really designed to give you the things that are most important in life.
It's not a holistic approach, and there's zero creativity in it. It's just, here's what you do. Yeah.
So I guess I say that, and that if anyone's listening to this and is maybe the first time you're hearing things like this, it's almost as if there are guys like yourself. It's like an entire industry is emerging because of this upward mobility. People have, like with the internet, you can just start a business. Something like CrossFit and running a CrossFit gym, the cost of doing business and opening up your business is super cheap. People open up a CrossFit gym with like 20, 30, 40, 50, like it's less than $100,000 to open up that business, even though it's brick and mortar. And to a lot of people who do open gyms, having $100,000 feels like a lot of money. But if you look at, say, restaurant industry, if you're starting with less than $1 million, then, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. And so a lot of times people feel like, oh, $100,000, it's so much money. In the grand scheme of business, it's hardly anything. And so there's this mentality of $100,000 is a lot. Making more than X amount of dollars is a lot. And I think it's good for people to hear this conversation because we've been following a model which is in the CrossFit industry it's still in its infancy of sorts. It's maturing. We're watching it mature for sure. But the idea of making more than $250,000 a year is
like a pipe dream.
It's almost unrealistic.
Yeah.
I remember sitting down with a client who owns a gym, and she kept on using the words realistic. And I just, every time she said realistic, I was just,
you could feel your body go like, ugh.
Yeah, I was like, stop using that word,
Yes.
please, because
Yes.
like you're completely limiting yourself with that language, and so I think that if you want to be somebody who is actually going to break through as a gym owner and get to the next level, there's some things that around the game that you have to stop believing is true, and that is you can only charge X amount of dollars. You can only have so many members. I have to operate my business the same way the guy down the street is doing it, and everyone's just kind of in this. They're just copying other people's games. I mean, this is kind of what we're talking about the whole time is, how are you playing this game, and you have to actually break out of whatever mold that you were put in, because as we're growing up, we're definitely growing up in a mold. And if things aren't working out the way it is, the way you want it to, you're going to have to make these changes. And so I've gone on for quite a bit. I think I'm just
That's good stuff.
setting this up a little bit.
Yep.
But if I'm going, okay, I'm willing to accept I'm in a mold. I'm not surrounded by anybody who is challenging these rules or helping me see this or helping me see the blind spots. Is the only answer to hire a coach? Is there what is the first steps beyond that? Or even if you start working with a coach, what is like a common first step when working with a client?
Well, I think it's just like a 12-step program. The first is acceptance, right? That where you are, for whatever reason, you do not have the tools or capacity to get beyond where you are. Like, what's predictable in life is that what you're getting, you're going to continue to get unless you change your modality and the way that you're being, not what you're doing. Again, like, you guys don't take my word for it, map it onto your own life experience. You've had issues in your life. You spent a lot of time doing shit to fix them. Has it fixed them? If it hasn't, that is a broken model, and you have to rediscover for yourself what models actually work. I would elicit that does not work for a majority of people. Again, you're just getting more, better, different, or the same results. It's like people go on dates all the time. They're like, I keep meeting crazy women, or I keep meeting asshole men. It's like, okay, well, you're forgetting that there's 7.5 billion people on the planet that are entirely unique. What are the chances that the same fucking person keeps showing up in your life? So if you're getting those results, you have to look internally and say, I am the common denominator in this situation. There must be some way I'm listening, some way I'm approaching the situation.
If you're running a business and I can't break 100 members, I can't break $10,000 a month in revenue. It's not
all here.
It's not because something's happening down the street or there's something wrong with your town or your members. There's something, and nothing wrong with you, but there needs to be something that you need to be willing to change. And I think I hear a lot of times also people, I go, okay, you're doing these 9 out of 10 things really well, but there's this one thing we really need to focus on this, and there's a really hard refusal. It's like, oh well, that's the thing we can't touch.
Right. Yeah, and look, you're gonna get people's natural resistance where they feel comfortable, and if it pushes their belief system outside of that, there's also, if I change, there's a threat that my environment will stop accepting me. And because we're socialized for acceptance, for, by the way, looking good. So here's like it's not a tactic, but it's something you want to make people aware of. Humans operate out of certain biases. One of the biases is looking good. We want to fucking look good. That's why we have a billion-dollar health industry that talks to you about six-pack abs. That's why every women's fitness magazine says how to get six-pack abs in 3 fucking days or whatever it is, right? And I'm talking about looking good, not just like physically, but like how we show up, like our personality. So that's why when you walk down the street and you trip over a crack that's not actually there, you turn around and blame something that's not even fucking there. You go, that fucking happened to me. Or you get in a car accident, it's always the other person's fault, because what it has you deal with is that you didn't look good in that moment, right? So if you can give up the context of looking good, it's a really powerful fucking thing when you start living your life from I don't care about being right, I don't care about looking good. Think about how many conversations you have that aren't working. You're just trying to be right about something. But what you don't see on the opposite side of being right about that thing, all the things you're giving up. Possibility, vulnerability, health, vitality, communication, love, all the things that everyone wants, we give that up just to be right about stuff, just to be fucking right about what? And then there's this whole other world that's available to you when you're just like, you know what? I'm going to give up being right about this. Now what's possible? So in those situations, right, they're being right about something. But again, it's like what's behind the being right. There's all that fear that they're going to show up in some way that they won't be accepted anymore.
Yeah, one thing I find that's common is people are afraid to charge over a certain amount because they're afraid. They'll say people aren't going to join my gym, but what they're really afraid of is being seen as greedy.
Like Henry Ford, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right? So we all grow up around certain money conversations, and that sets your financial thermostat. Here's what's possible for someone like me, and that's your ceiling. It should be a joke to break through 6 figures. As long as I've been alive in 20 years, incomes really haven't gone up, and people still look at like making 6 figures a year like it's some fucking holy shrine of things. It's like, really, what does 6 figures provide you today? Very little. Like, I'm from New York City. If you're living on 6 figures a year, you're like poor, basically. You can go out, you can eat, you can do this, you can do that. I don't know how people make it on less, to be honest. That, like, we should be in a, we shouldn't be anywhere. We could be in a place in society where we're like, it's a fucking joke to make 6 figures a year. Like, we're $1 million a year society now. Like, that's the only aim I have. And yeah, it's going to take something to go against your programming. But again, it's like it's positioned like you need to change, it comes off like there's something wrong with me, I got to fix it, instead of looking at what else is possible. It's like that's like the best question. Like, what else is possible when we look here, right? So, you know, when I coach people, like, imagine this was like a stack of cups, like plastic clear cups, and life is coming at me. And I always have a filtration as to how life is coming at me. We can prove this through neuroscience that what you're seeing in this room, 95% of it is just operating out of memory, because your brain conserves energy by just showing you memories versus showing you reality. So you're looking at life and everything is being filtered through that. You know, living in a state of possibilities, like unstacking all those cups, putting them all over the table. Now life is still coming at you, but instead of being like, okay, there's one way to look at it, I'm like, all right, if we look here, if we look there, if we look there, we could see how different futures would arise out of those possibilities, and then saying which one is the one that feels best to me. Now, that doesn't mean that you're locked into that either, right? Because if that doesn't work for you, you can step away from it. So if I can make a distinction here, I've yet to meet anybody who naturally knows what a choice actually is. Like, making a choice, they don't know what that is. They know how to decide things. So if we look at the word decide, C-I-D-E is the suffix, right? Side. What does it share its genealogy with? Homicide, genocide, suicide, pesticide. So what does that tell you about that suffix? That suffix means to kill off. And in the case of decisions or deciding, it means to kill off possibility. So when you had that situation that everyone laughed at you at class and you decided, I'm bad, it's like you're sentencing yourself, like prison, sentencing yourself to a reality where you see everything through the eyes of I'm bad, right? To make a choice is to be completely free of any consideration whatsoever. I'm just choosing because there's no even because. I'm just choosing to choose. And when you're in that place, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to choose that this is how I'm going to operate this week. And we're just going to see how that arises. And if you don't like that, there's no being stuck. Okay, well, that doesn't work. I'll go back. I'll go this way. I'll go that way. And you start being very, like, pliable, and you start flowing with everything versus having this rigidity and having to view everything through one place. And that's super powerful.
I noticed you said you're going to choose to be a different way, not choose to do something differently. If somebody's never even considered to choose to be a different way, is there like an easy first thing that someone could try on that would be like, okay, I'm going to be different in this way for a week and see how things
no,
out the other side?
I get that. You know, I think part of that is having a conversation to reveal to somebody what happens when they're being the way they're being, because mostly the people are unconscious. Right. Like, how often do people get in the car, they drive home, you're suddenly like in your driveway and you're like, I was completely checked out. I don't even know who got me here, right? That you have no consciousness. And mostly where you've been through your loops so many times that you actually kind of are just along for the ride because you keep doing the same shit over and over again. You've automated yourself. We automate business. We want stuff like that in certain areas. It creates us to leverage time and do all these things. And in a lot of ways, when we automate day to day, we're not present. We're not really noticing, and that's what locks you in. So again, you need someone to reflect back to you, like, hey, when you're being that way, here's how it's arising in life. Now you point to it, and that starts making it be like, oh shit, like I really get that. So I use car analogies a lot, A, because I fucking love cars, and B, I think it's just, you know, palpable and easy for everyone. Like, having a breakthrough in every area of life, people have it like it's something to figure out. A breakthrough is really just an opening. It's like I'm going to show you something so you can raise your awareness over this part of your business. So you guys can have a conversation with somebody, be like, hey, I see that you're really struggling here. Like, let's look at how this pattern keeps showing up, and let's give it some language so that you can be consciously aware of it when it's happening. And there it is, right? So if I'm like driving down the highway and there's a car that comes up next to me, and I've never seen that car before. It's like the first time I'm viewing it, and I'm like, fuck, that's a sexy ass car. Some part of you is like a fuck yes to that car, right? And it makes that choice like, maybe I'll go buy that when next time I go switch or something like that. And then what happens? You go to bed that night, you wake up the next morning, and that car is like all over the fucking road. Did you ever notice that phenomenon? It's like just suddenly everywhere, right? Or sometimes you like hear about some concept and then suddenly other people are telling you about that concept. You're like, oh, did everyone know about this already? Like, how did I not know? So notice that I talked about like pointing at phenomenons, right? That's pointing to a phenomenon. Now, did those people go and buy that car overnight and suddenly it's everywhere? No. You just saw that thing. You made a choice within yourself that you're a yes to that. And suddenly here's all this manifestation of physical reality that you can now see that was always hidden from your view. And now you start seeing opportunities oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again. Oh, there it is again. So like in relationship, it's the same way. If I point to something and I give it language and you go, oh, I see that. I don't need to fucking force it down your throat. It will naturally arise as it does, because now you'll see opportunities everywhere to transform it. Breakthroughs by their nature, everything's paradoxical. Breakthroughs and breakdowns have a relationship. It's not like you can have a breakthrough and be like, yes, I fucking see that I'm not powerful. Now I'm fucking powerful. If you declare I'm going to be powerful, you declare I'm going to be happy, you declare I'm going to be whatever you're going to be, what will show up next is everywhere where you're not, and it will cause breakdown everywhere in your fucking life. So if you say, like, I want to be happy, I'm choosing to be happy, every relationship where you're not, you're going to notice that. Every relationship where it's not working in business, you're going to notice that that's not making you happy. And then it's about letting it go or doing the work for integrity to get it in alignment with what it means to be happy and operating that way.
Once you notice it, it's like the string or the thread has been pulled.
Absolutely.
There's no going back.
There's no
you
going
can't
back.
You can't notice it and then not resolve it.
You can choose to not resolve it.
You can
It'll
fight
keep
it.
causing you pain, though.
Yeah, you can fight it, and it's just it'll just get worse.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and that's what it is. When I do, even like in a relationship, I promise you, and this is not like an ego thing, people who've lived with me, like my roommate I told you before, went from being a bartender to making $60,000 a month, right? That was living in my house, not because I was coaching him, around being these kind of conversations. It can't help but have you see where you have misalignment. I promise you spend enough time around me, like your life is going to evolve also, and not because I'm coaching you, because we're actively participating in conversations that stretch us beyond what we believe is possible, and you can't help but be impacted by that in every area of your life. You just can't. So like these days, I don't even feel like I have to coach much. It's these conversations. It's like subtle things that it's just like little seeds that are planting in the subconscious mind. Anything that's planted in there will eventually grow into a conscious thought, right? And that's it. It's just like showing people like, where they're like, wow, I never thought of it that way. That's it. That's going to create transformation. And people, again, they're looking at the mile, so they're thinking to themselves, I fucking need to change everything about my life. Like, I want to change fucking everything. And you don't need to. You need to make 1 degree shift in what you're doing. So if we have like 2 parallel lines and that's your future, and you show that to a client, you're like, hey, look, it's predictable. If you keep doing this is where it's going to end up. It's going to end up where it's right now. You're walking down the same street thinking that there's going to be a new building at the end of this road. It's the same fucking street. You want a different result? Walk down a different street. So if you make like a 1 degree shift in the beginning, you won't notice it. It'll be like an internal knowing, but it won't manifest in reality because it hasn't had time yet to manifest. But given a long enough timeline, even a 1 degree shift, right? 5 years later, completely new future.
Boom.
All right, mic drop.
I think we're done.
All right, cool.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Again, was it SatoriPrime.com?
SatoriPrime.com or youwillhaveitall.com.
Yep. And all the social medias as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Pleasure.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, guys.